to DCS F-16C Viper startup training. I am Top Gun with the AKA War Dog Squadron. So I'm going to start off with a disclaimer here that this is a short, abbreviated cold start sequence, so I'm going to be skipping the built-in tests, anything along those lines. So just getting the aircraft up as quickly as possible, not messing with any of that stuff since it is a sim. But if you have a mission that you're doing that has random failures turned on, or if you just feel like you want to do all the stuff that a regular Viper pilot would do on a cold start and do all those tests, then Wags has produced a startup video that covers all those. He did a really good job with it, so I'd recommend that one. But if you just want to get up and running as quickly as possible, then this one's for you. I also tend to hit some of the other systems, some of the smaller systems that others sometimes miss in their start videos. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm operating off of checklist version 1.4. The red text is items that are already in the correct place if you're jumping into an aircraft for the first time. But if you come back in and land and shut your engine down to repair and you need to start back up again, you'll want to make sure you check those items on the list just to make sure that none of that's changed during the course of the flight. The items in blue text are just things that are special note, either because of timing or because of loadout issues. So we'll hit those as we get to them. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go down to main power and we'll do middle position for battery. And then communications for ATC. In this aircraft, we've got two radios. We got COM1, COM2, and COM1 is UHF, COM2 is VHF, so some bands of AM, FM. And then we've got a backup UHF panel down here. Those of you who've flown the A-10C before will recognize this. It's the same radio panel that the A-10C uses. If you want to contact ATC prior to engine start, these radios up here will not work. They require engine power delivered by the generator. So if you want to contact them, you'll have to use this radio down here because this one just requires battery power. So let's go ahead and turn this on to both. And if your mission designer has provided you with some presets, you can switch this over to preset and then change your channel to what you need. Otherwise, just leave it in manual. And if you've got easy communications turned off, then you'll need a separate key binding for each of the radios, one for UHF, one for VHF. So let's contact UHF and contact the ATC. So forward for UHF, F5 for ATC, F1 for Creech, F3 for startup. And before we get the engine started, we're going to cut down on noise. We'll go ahead and put the canopy down. You can either keybind that or you can try and hit the switch in the cockpit. It can be a little difficult to get to sometimes. One thing I've noticed I've run into in the past is if you map the canopy switch to a two-position switch, if you just click it, click the switch once to the forward position or however you got it set, then it may not let you actually close this latch to lock the canopy closed. So just be aware of how you map your canopy switch. You may need to put it back into the neutral position before it lets you click on the latch to close it. So let's contact ATC or ground crew to get some munitions put on. So go back to the parent menu and F8 for ground crew, and we'll rearm repair, and we'll just put some 120s on the wingtips.
Request rearming. Copy.
So let's move on. We've got O2, we'll set to norm. That's set by default over here to the left position. And then air source, we'll set that to norm. Put our main power to the full forward position. engine feed to normal, already set by default. JFS to start to the aft position to get the engine started running. And once we get to 20%, we'll put the throttle up over the idle detent. If you've got a Warthog controller, you can use the act of pulling the throttles up and over the detent to act for that. That can actually be key bound, so you can map it to that. If you don't, then you'll need to probably map a key to that. Once it's at 20%, pull the throttle up and over. And it doesn't take much power to get this aircraft rolling, either on purpose or on accident. So I would also advise at this point to put the parking brake into the full forward position for parking brake. Because I've seen more than a couple people drift into the grass. And once the engine comes online, you just heard that real staticky hiss. That's the next step. You need to set the squelches, which are these two knobs here for both COM 1 and COM 2. Just set those to like the 12 o'clock position. And let's go ahead and turn on some interior lighting. We got console lights, instrument panel, and data entry display is already set by default. And let's clear the master caution out. So now we can move on to our avionics. I have to kind of look over the seat a little bit. So we've got MMC, ST, STA, MFD, UFC. Map position, don't bother with because it's non-functional in this model of the aircraft. GPS and data link. And then we've also got our mids over here. Go ahead and rotate that over to the on position. And lastly, let's go ahead and start our INS alignment process. You want this under the align section on norm. And this will take approximately 4 minutes to complete. So swing over to your clock and hit the button on the top right to start your stopwatch. And that'll let us know when we've hit 4 minutes or not. Now we need CI to UFC, that's already set by default. Set the IFF master to norm. And let's go ahead and turn on our exterior lighting. I'm not sure what the modes of the anti-collision are for. I'll have to look that up at some point. For position, set it to flash, it's set by default. User preference for your wing, tail, and fuselage lighting as far as bright, dim, or off. I'll just set mine to bright. Same thing goes for your formation lights. Obviously right now we don't need aerial refueling. And then the master mode, we'll switch that to norm. Unfortunately right now, it's middle of October. As of right now, the exterior lights are still non-functional. So, but at least now you know where they're at. So for countermeasures, let's go ahead and turn the system on. This power button down here. Set radar warning, input to on, jammer input to on, chaff, flares, and we'll go ahead and set the mode to semi-automatic. And we can set this to whatever program we want. There's at least 1 or 2 videos out there that I've seen that show you how to actually go into the files in DCS where you can actually edit the program for the countermeasure dispense. It's a really good video. If I find the link, I'll go ahead and put it in the video. But that's definitely worth looking at least once or twice. Landing lights, up for landing, down for taxi, middle for off. Obviously daytime we don't need it right now, but I'll go ahead and turn them on anyways. Stores configuration switch. So this is going to rely on you. You're going to need to know what you're starting off with. If it's just a light load, like a couple of Sidewinders or AMRAAMs, then you're probably going to be Cat 1. But if you've got drop tanks and bomb loads on, you're probably going to be Cat 3. So I need Cat 1 for this. It's set to Cat 1 by default. Make sure that both the pitch and roll autopilots are in the middle off position. And same thing for master arm, set to off in the middle. And laser arm should be in the down off position. Fuel quantity, external fuel transfer norm. Obviously, if you don't have tanks set, not really much of a difference there. And then for the display, go ahead and set the fuel gauge display to norm. Let's go ahead and turn on our heads-up display. Rotate this up to on. Let's go ahead and set our radios on the upfront controllers. So let's turn off the backup unit. Let's go to our UHF radio, so COM1, and it's actually already set from setting the unit down here, but we'll go through it. If you needed to manually change the station, go ahead and set your radio and then enter. And if you want to go back to review it, I mean, the default view shows you both your radio settings, but you can check each one individually. And once you're done, switch the 4 weights back to return. And let's uncage our standby ADI until that flag goes away, and then go ahead and recenter this. Just mouse wheel over this to rotate. So if you're carrying a targeting pod, you're going to want to hit the right hardpoint switch here forward to the on position to put power to the pod. If you don't, then you don't need to mess with this. For the radar, FCR to on, radar altimeter, full forward to on. And then the HUD controls, this is going to be pretty much pilot preference. I set the HUD scales to VVVAH, which is full forward position, and the flight path is set to attitude and flight path marker, which is the full forward position, which is there by default. And the DED data, I set that to full forward as well, so it basically acts as a repeater, so the display on your DED is transposed onto the HUD. It can make the HUD a bit busy, so if it starts getting really cluttered, you may want to turn that back off, but again, that's personal preference. For speed, I set mine to full forward, which is where it's at by default for CAS, calibrated airspeed, and same thing for altitude, the radar altimeter. I believe this switch here basically switches between strictly barometric or automatic switching for the radar altimeter, which basically is if you're under 5,000 feet, it automatically goes off of the radar altimeter, and if you're above 5,000, it switches automatically to barometric. So let's check our time, and it looks like it's been more than 4 minutes, so our INS should be aligned at this point. So let's put that to nav. And we'll go ahead and stop our clock and reset it in case we need it for something else later. So 1 click to stop it, 1 to reset. And let's arm our ejection seat, put that lever down. And put anti-ice to the full right position over here. It's set by default. Brake switch, we can go ahead and put this back to the middle anti-skid position. And turn on your nose wheel steering. You're going to have to keybind that to something. Make sure when you hit it that you get this light pop on over here. And I like to, when I'm done getting a startup completed, I switch my exterior from flash over to steady, so that's a visual indication for the other guys in my squad that, you know, if they look over to me, they can see that I'm ready to go. So at this point, you can go ahead and contact ATC to request taxi clearance, and you're pretty much good to go. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to contact me, but I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.